Last time I was here, a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, I gave a talk here on neuroplasticity. That is the characteristic of our brains that allows it to reorganize itself functionally and organizationally as a result of our experiences and learning. Near the end of that talk, I discussed a couple of ways where you could take advantage of that characteristic to make changes in your life. Okay? This talk is going to focus upon actually using a specific technique that takes advantage of the characteristic of neuroplasticity in order to relieve some of the suffering that we bring upon ourselves due to some of the beliefs that we carry. There's an old Buddhist legend, probably false, but a man came to the Buddha one day and said, "Master, I need you to help me with my problems. I have all these problems." And he started to go through the entire litany. His children, his job, his finances, the list went on and on and on of all the problems that the man had. And he got to the end of the list, and the Buddha held up his hand, and he said, "I'm sorry, I can't help you." The man looked at the Buddha and said, "But you, Master, you're a great teacher. You're known far and wide for helping people who are suffering and so on. What do you mean you can't help me with my problems?" And the Buddha said, "Look around. Look around you. We all have problems. In fact, we all have exactly 43 problems. And it doesn't do any good to solve them. Because as quick as you solve one, another one pops up somewhere else. So we keep the same number of problems. So I can't help you solve your problems." And the man was very discouraged. He turned around, started walking away. The Buddha said, "Wait a minute." He said, "I can help you with your 44th problem." And the man said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You just told me that we all had only 43 problems." He said, "Well, your 44th problem is that you don't want to have any problems." And that's what we're going to talk about today, the 44th problem. Because none of us wants problems, none of us wants hassle. We've all developed beliefs and belief systems about things, some of which are irrational. And these irrational beliefs, when we have them, cause us to suffer. Suffering isn't really the word that I prefer to use. The Buddhists have a better word. It's dukkha, which is often translated as suffering, but that's not really the same thing. Dukkha is being separated from that which we like, or being forced to endure that which we do not like. It's a stress, anxiety, dissatisfaction. The world or reality doesn't meet our expectations. It's a disquietude. Well, it's a funny thing about reality. The best definition of reality was written by one of my favorite authors, Philip K. Dick, who said, "Reality is that which doesn't go away when you stop believing in it." Reality doesn't give a darn about our beliefs. It is what it is. Okay, we can't change reality, or most of it. Things happen. The only things we can change are our beliefs about reality and our perceptions of reality. That we have at least some control over. In my earlier talk, I touched on the subject of rational emotive behavior therapy, or R.E.B.T. It's a subset of cognitive behavioral therapy. In fact, it was one of the first cognitive behavioral therapies. It was developed, by Dr. Albert Ellis in the mid-50s. It's well established. It's a well-established therapy. A lot of research has been done upon it. It's very efficacious. And it's used by therapists all over the world to treat such things as depression, anxiety, anger management, addiction, OCD, and things of that nature. I became involved with R.E.B.T. when I became involved with Smart Recovery, a secular addiction recovery program that uses R.E.B.T. As a tool to treat addiction. So I had to, of course, learn a good deal about it. I'm not a therapist. Okay, let me say that from the beginning. Any of you come up to me after the talk and say, gee, if I practice these things, can I stop taking my meds and seeing my therapist? I'm not going to answer the question. I'm not here to do that. I'm here just to present some ideas that you may or may not think apply to you. If they do, fine. If they don't, fine. Okay. Ellis believed that we're not only upset by events that happen, they're not the primary thing that upsets us. Our upsetness is caused by our views of reality, the language we use, the way our belief systems function, and our philosophies about the world and others. We weren't born with our belief systems. These are something that we developed over time as a result of our experiences, starting from earliest childhood. Very often, we don't examine our belief systems. They are what they are. Something happens, and it triggers a certain belief, and we act a certain way. And very often, we never challenge that belief or think about it. It's part of our habit memory. Something happens, and we react. We act as we feel, and we feel as we think. Therefore, we act as we think. If we can change our thoughts or our beliefs, we can change our actions and how we treat ourselves and how we treat other people. R.E.B.T. looks at the process this way. A is an activating event. It's not the real problem. It can be something that's internal or external. It can be a thought or any event in the past, present, or future. We can be worrying about something that triggers a certain belief and causes us to feel in a certain manner. B is our belief about the A. If our belief about the activating event is dysfunctional or irrational, the consequence, which is C, is likely to be self-defeating and destructive. I'm going to give plenty of examples of these as I go along. And there's no test at the end either, by the way. The consequence, C, are the self-defeating behaviors. I was talking about anger, resentment, letting other people rent space in our heads. The he said, she said conversations that we have in our heads before or after real events. Depression, anxiety, self-blame, self-pity, hurt, guilt, and shame. These are all consequences of our own belief systems. D is a dispute of the belief, okay, which we first must recognize as being irrational, which means we must examine it. Not an easy thing to do when we're normally used to A, something happens, B, it triggers a belief, and C, there's a consequence. Well, in there someplace we have to examine that belief. We have to stop and say, wait a minute, is that belief rational? And that's the technique I'm going to talk about. E, the E part, way down at the bottom here, is the new consequence as a result of the new belief. And hopefully it's a better outcome. One last Zen story I want to tell. If I was to sum up this whole talk with one story, it would be this. Not really a story, it's more of a scene. I have lost my favorite teacup. Now I can have lost my favorite teacup and be absolutely miserable. I can beat myself up over it. I can call myself a fool. I can thrash myself thoroughly about losing the teacup. I can do all those things. That's a choice I have. Or I can have lost my favorite teacup and be okay with it. Okay? Get another teacup and move on. Either way, the teacup is gone. Okay, the reality is the teacup is gone. My choice is what I want to believe about that. Do I want to be okay with it and go on? Or do I want to sit there and stew about it? That's a choice I have. Dr. Ellis identified 3 core irrational beliefs that he found among the people he was dealing with. 3 that are core, and all the rest that I'm going to talk about are derivatives from them. The language that's used in these beliefs is pretty harsh. Think about the language that we use when we talk to ourselves inside our head. The language we use toward ourselves and others. What we call ourselves, what we call other people. Not necessarily that we express, but what goes on inside our head, which is where the upsetness is.